Hello, and welcome to my another session on Microsoft security initiatives. As many of you might have been seeing my demonstration around other Microsoft security initiative, this is a session, and I have already presented so far some videos around Microsoft phishing emails and Microsoft Exchange Online ATP. I had also published another video on Azure ATP, pretty intriguing. I have also published a Microsoft Identity Management Solution with Azure B2b, enhancing your ROI of your on-prem business applications to the users of your choice. And this is the new session today. And we would be talking about and doing a live demonstration of Azure multi-factor authentication. And as many of you might have either been using multi-factor authentication or might have heard about multi-factor authentication. But before I actually get into the live demonstration, I just want to mention that more and more organizations with the invent of their cloud journey has been looking around a second layer of security or second factor of authentication. And in that case, Azure multi-factor authentication has been helping organizations of almost all types and all sizes. And this demonstration is around to show you the capabilities of Azure multi-factor authentication, both for cloud-based application as well as on-prem application. With that, let's just get into briefly that what the overall architecture of Azure MFA is, and we'll be talking about both all three scenarios here and actually demoing you all three scenarios. The first scenario being a cloud app, and in that case this cloud app could be, let's say for an example, Exchange Online. A user tries to access an Exchange Online. It goes and talks to the Azure Active Directory for authentication. Azure Active Directory authentication sends it to the multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication sends it to the user's mobile device. Once it gets confirmation, sends it back to the user, and user gets authenticated, right? And in this case, if the cloud authentication is using single sign-on through ADFS, it also will come through the SAML to the ADFS and then goes to the same process back again. So that's a very brief thing, and I think it's no-brainer here to understand how that Microsoft cloud apps, Exchange Online, Sharepoint Online, and variety of other apps that you and your organizations are working on can be very easily configured with multi-factor authentication or a phone factor authentication. At the same time, many of you may not be aware of that this multi-factor authentication is also extended to your on-prem applications, right? When we talk about on-prem application, one of the most common use of multi-factor authentication is VPN, right? It could be a Cisco VPN or Microsoft VPN solution that you could use multi-factor authentication server. This server has to be deployed on-prem, or you can use network policy server for that matter, and it still get the same stuff done. But the multi-factor authentication server can be configured as a radius server for your VPN configuration or VPN two-factor authentication. Same way you can also do for LDAP, you can also do for your on-prem websites running on IIS, and you can also do for RDS, remote desktop services, and Windows or virtual desktops running on Windows 2008 R2. This is very important to remember. I have wasted some time. I just want to make sure that you understand it. When you're talking about RDS or VDI, please do not try it on Windows Server 2012 or 2012 R2. It is yet not supported there. This is unfortunate. I think Microsoft is working on it, but the fact of the matter is it will not work for RDS on Windows Server 2012 or 2012 R2. I wasted about 4 hours into that, and you will see in my lab I deployed that and it didn't work. And after wasting 4 hours when I did research, I found that it doesn't work on 2012 or 2012 R2, and then I ended up deploying a 2008 R2, and voila, and it just was a piece of cake, right? So that's what this demonstration is. And then the third thing is the cloud app, like something else, like what we will be showing you here. One of my cloud app which is a Azure B2b cloud app that allows my organization to use their on-prem SharePoint for external users. So we'll be seeing that as well as in our live demonstration. So I hope this will be a rich experience for you and rich demonstration of the capabilities of Microsoft Azure MFA. And with that, I think I already mentioned most of the stuff, but let's see what our demo would include. We would be demonstrating a multi-factor authentication for Exchange Online. We would also be doing Azure B2b multi-factor authentication, which I just mentioned, for on-prem SharePoint access to external users. We will be seeing what the conditional Azure access mean. And then we would also see a Microsoft Windows VPN multi-factor authentication, now followed by a IIS-based website multi-factor authentication. And as I mentioned, that we will also be looking into the remote desktops multi-factor authentication too. So I think that would cover most of the features that Azure MFA brings to you and your organization or your partner's organization. And with that, I think it's the high time to get into the action, and let's get into the demo itself. So with that, I'll just pause for a brief second here and come. So here we are, and I am at my Office 365 admin portal. And before I dive into and show you the capabilities of Azure MFA, I just need to mention that Azure MFA can be bought as a separate subscription, or it is included in your enterprise mobility plus security. Basically, it is part of Azure Active Directory Premium. And if you buy Azure Active Directory Premium, then also you obviously get multi-factor authentication. So you have got multiple ways of adapting to Azure MFA. You can buy it as a separate subscription, you can buy it as Azure AD Premium, and you can also buy it, or you already might be using it under Enterprise Mobility plus Security suite, right? So that's the premise in terms of subscription. Very straightforward. You can go and look into the pricing of different options that fits into your organization. But let's just get into the active demonstration of multi-factor authentication. In my environment, I have the Enterprise Mobility plus Security subscription enabled, and I have enabled it for a couple of users. Let's try to do it for a brand new user, and let's see here. And here is my user, and we can right away, if you go down here, we can go to manage multi-factor authentication. And if I go to Delta, is my user who is not yet enabled for multi-factor authentication. You could do it for bulk users or few users, but in this scenario, we just enable it for this user. Now, when you enable it, next time the user would log in, it will ask for the setup of the phone numbers if it is already not there, and it will either based on how you configure either text message or a phone call would be sent to the user. And once the user registers itself to Azure MFA, that means from that point that user would be enforced for multi-factor authentication. So let me show you here another user who has already been enabled, and then if you see here, he is enforced right now, right? So you don't really need to do anything to enforce it. The moment the user registers it, it automatically enforces multi-factor authentication. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. You could do it for one user, or you could do it for multiple users or bulk users at your ease, however you feel comfortable with, right? So that's the implication. And I'm going to try to see if I can register this user, the Delta one that we just tried. So let me get into. So if you see here, we have enabled this particular user, Usha Aurora, and we have enabled that. Now let's see what the experience is in terms of registration, right? So try to get into login.microsoftonline.com, and I'm gonna go to back here, another user. that's the right name. Okay. Registering to the ADFS. And here you go. If you see here, this is where the setup window comes for multi-factor authentication, and that's where the user would register authentication phone, office phone, or mobile phone, whatever he or she wants to use. Need to choose the country, choose the phone number. Very straightforward. I should be receiving a phone call.
Using the Microsoft sign-in verification system. Please press the pound key to finish your sign-in was successfully verified. Goodbye.
And at the same time here, guys, if you see here, this is the password, app password for Microsoft Cloud Application, especially for Outlook and Skype for Business or any other cloud application. This user can copy this password and then keep it for other Flex client where the MFA is being deployed. That's pretty much it in terms of the registration, right? And it's all good to go, right? So now, once we have seen the registration, next step is to see this multi-factor authentication working in both the scenarios, and then we'll come to the conditional Azure access. So what I'm going to try to show you here is the user who has been configured for multi-factor authentication for Exchange Online, but a conditional Azure access is configured. And what conditional Azure access means, which we're going to demonstrate in a few seconds, the policy around it, that when the user is in a specific network, let's say the internal network, then the user should not be prompted for multi-factor authentication, because that could be very annoying. But when the user is outside the network, external network, then it should prompt for the multi-factor authentication. And that's, I think, very important to understand. That's very sweet in my viewpoint. It just provides a better user and user acceptance. So let's look into that scenario first, and then we'll come to the conditional Azure access. So what we're going to show you first is an on-prem experience, and we have a workstation here. This is the workstation. This is on-prem environment. This is the Active Directory that he is logging on, LGL MSFT US. This is the on-prem Active Directory. This is an on-prem workstation, right? So if you go here, sorry, should join. And this is the part of LGL MSFT.us domain. And so this is all internal, right? And we are talking internally. So when this user needs to go to a internal site and try to log on to Exchange Online, for an example, I hope is that it should not prompt him for any multi-factor authentication, right? So if I go here, outlook.office365.com, it's asking for the credentials because I'm in a private browser, right? So this user is JB Garden at lglmsft.us, right? And I hope the ADFS should kick in now, and he should get into his mailbox. Voila, right? So he didn't get any prompt for going into his mailbox, right? And let's close it here. Now the same user tries to go and come from outside. That's where the conditional Azure access would show you the importance here, right? So if I go here now and go to outlook.office365.com, and I need to go to another user. And it takes me to the signing page. This ADFS is configured for some other purpose slightly differently. That's why I am getting this window just for the testing purposes. And here you go. So now I should be receiving a call momentarily.
You're using the Microsoft Sign-In Verification System. Please press the Your sign-in was successfully verified. Aye.
And that's pretty much it. So now what we have shown so far is that we can very easily enable the MFA for Microsoft Cloud applications by going to the Office 365 admin portal. We have also seen a conditional Azure access where the users are not prompted when they are on their internal network, but when the user comes from external network, then they are being prompted for the second authentication or phone factor authentication. Now, once we have seen this in action, now that next thing that we need to look into that how do we really accomplish it, right? So let's go right away into the portal, and I'm going to go to the Azure portal. Azure Active Directory, of course. And when you scroll it down under security, here you go. This is a conditional access. That's what we call as a conditional access. And you can create policies as many as you like. I have one for you here to show you what it really means. So first of all, you can define which users and groups would be included into this policy or would be applied this policy. And we all know that we do it all the time. I'm including all users. I'm excluding myself here because I'm testing this and demoing this solution so many times. I don't need to be prompted every single time on a phone call. That could be very annoying. So I remove myself, but rest of the users is being applied. Then we need to see which application we are applying to. So as you see here, I'm applying for Office 365 Exchange Online. You can add additional applications if you go here. And I also have one more application that we will talk shortly, which is my Azure B2b application for on-prem Sharepoint. So both the applications are being configured for multi-factor authentication. If you go here, you can choose your application here, right? And you can scroll it down and pick it up, any other application that you have. And you can also type the, let's say you want to go to SharePoint Online for an example, right? So I don't think SharePoint, I see it here, right? If I search here, SharePoint, right, here you go. So Office 365 SharePoint Online, you can add that. Let me just add it just for the sake here, right? So select, and now I'm applying it to SharePoint too. So very straightforward. I don't think it needs it's a no-brainer to me and no-brainer to you. It's being applied to all users. It's being applied to the select applications that you want. You can also apply to the portal as well if you want, portal dot of Microsoft.com too, right? So whatever URLs you choose, you can pick it up, whether they are Microsoft Cloud application or the applications that you have developed inside Azure. Those all applications would come into this category. And then we go to the conditions, which is very important. Yes, cancel. I'm going to done here, save it, and then going back to the conditions here. So first of all, you have the option to choose which devices you want to apply it to. I'm doing it for all devices, whether they are phones or Windows or Mac or Android, right? So, and you have the choice. If you want to be selective, you can choose it, but for my demonstration, I'm really not worried about it. What I'm worried about here is for conditional Azure access, as I mentioned and demonstrated earlier, that it should not apply to me when my users are on my network. So I said, hey, you apply this on any location, but exclude my trusted locations, right? And this is important. So you can create your trusted location. I'm going to show you in a few seconds. And once you do that, if the user is in your trusted location, the policy would not get applied, right? Straightforward. And I'm going to show you momentarily that setting, but let's just see. We have seen all the three conditions here, and now we need to see what we are trying to do here, right? So if I go here, what I'm seeing here, you can block access or grant access, and based on require multi-factor authentication. So this is pretty powerful, right? So you can have one policy created. Let's say you temporarily want to stop users accessing out of web access certain set of users. You can go ahead and block access, right, very easily. And then we have this multi-factor authentication, which is the demo for today, right? Very straightforward team here. This doesn't need any real big intelligence to understand this. This is pretty straightforward, simple. Now, same is this. This is in the preview mode. I use app reference, so we're not going to talk about it. Let me just show you the trusted location, because I think that's what you might be wondering what that looks like, right? So if you go here, the name locations, you can add your new locations, and if you go there, you can call them as a trusted, right? Make as a trusted location. You can define your IP address ranges here, and you also have something called as a configure MFA trusted IPs. That takes you to this web page. Now here you can add the required networks in your organizations, which is what I did. And I just said, hey, if you would have watched that, the first window where it was asking to doing the multi-factor authentication, it says that it will remember it for 1 day, so it doesn't really need to bother it many times, right? Very straightforward call to phone, text message, notification. We are allowing users to create app password, which I just showed you a few minutes back. So that's all the conditional Azure access is all about, right? And pretty straightforward, pretty neat, but the end result is your better end user experience, right? And that's what we all care about, because when you are deploying these cloud technologies, one of the key factors is that how do we make it more user friendly, and this is exactly what we did so far here. So with this, we have shown you that you can enable MFA, you can do conditional Azure access within a matter of few minutes. That means you would avoid any annoyance for on-prem users or the users when they are on their internal network. And you have also seen that it works flawlessly. You can also apply it to different devices. You can also apply to your select applications that you want to deploy MFA without any problem, right? I have also mentioned what kind of a subscription you need. Now, the next part of the demonstration is to show you a multi-factor authentication, as I showed you that application there for Azure B2b application. Now let's just look into that very quickly, and that would show you that that works as well. Now we are going to go to a on-prem Sharepoint. Right, this is my on-prem Sharepoint form. This is not Sharepoint Online. If you look at the URL on top, and it gives me two options, whether I log in with the Windows authentication or I'm logging on with Azure B2b application. And in this case, I'm going to try this account here who has been this. There is another demonstration for that if you want to watch how to the whole Azure B2b experience. And I think you should watch that. That's a small 15-minute demonstration, but very effective. That is on YouTube as well. And here you go. The phone should be ringing any minute again.
In the Microsoft sign-in verification system, please press the pound key to finish your verification. Your sign-in was successfully verified. Goodbye.
And he gets to the on-prem Sharepoint flawlessly. This is the power of Azure B2b. This is the power of MFA folks here. Extremely impressive. I'm at least intrigued and excited about this technology, and that's the reason I am sharing with all of you here. hopefully you find it as excited and as intriguing as I do. So that's what we have understood about the MFA running on-prem, oh sorry, for the cloud-based application, whether it's a Microsoft cloud application or whether it is your own application that you have been developing within the Azure. Now we need to extend the benefit of Azure to an on-prem solution, right? So I have done in my slide deck, I have mentioned that we're going to at least look into these three different options. One is the VPN, the second is the IIS website, and third is the RDS services, right? In order to accomplish that, as the slide deck has shown you, we need to deploy the Azure MFA server first, right? So if I go back to Azure MFA, and I need to go back into the portal here. So the only thing that you folks needs to do is that you go to the Azure Active Directory and you scroll it down, and here is your MFA server, right? Okay, so you can download the binaries for the MFA server on the server that you would be deploying, and you can define the architecture for high availability and putting behind the load balancer and whatnot, all good stuff there. But the most important thing that we need to do is to generate the email and the passphrase or the password here. This would be required. This gets expired probably in 4-hour window if I remember correctly. So you do it when actually you are ready for the deployment. Don't try to create it in advance and say it will work, because it will expire, right? So now once you have understood this and you have downloaded the binaries to your MFA server, which I'm going to get into in a second, then deployment is pretty straightforward, right? So you launch the MSI and then it would start deploying the Visual C++ as a prerequisite. I just want to make sure that after the Visual C++ is installed, there is a slight delay before it launches the next part of your Azure MFA server, right? So don't get restless. Just be patient for a few minutes before the next part of the installation kicks in, right? And once you install it, it will ask you for this email and password, and you just copy and paste it there, and your Azure MFA server is good to go, right? So let's get to the Azure MFA server now. So let's get into, so what I have done here in my lab, that I have got a domain controller here, which is Mfa DC. I have got a MFA server, which is what I just spoke about. We'll get into that. I have a VPN server, which is a Windows VPN server. I couldn't do it on Cisco AnyConnect or something. I didn't have access to that, but it is very much doable with the Cisco AnyConnect as well. And then I have got a client, a Windows 7 client, which we would be testing the different aspects, right? So very straightforward here. And then we'll go into the MFA server first, right? Let's see if I have already connected here. All right, MFA server right here. So as I said, this deployment was very straightforward, right? I downloaded the binaries and I just installed it, and here is my MFA server, right? Once the MFA server Windows is launched on, you can configure the directory integration with your Active Directory. So you can go here and use Active Directory, included trusted domain. I have added my domain here, which is mfadc. If you go here, edit, right? So this is my domain controller. This is the DN of my root DN that I need to use for my Active Directory. And unless you are using SSL, make sure that you choose the queries as Windows. Do not choose SSL because it's not going to test it. It's not going to be successful. I gave the bind user password. I can test it. Voila, it works fine, right? And then you can go ahead and configure the synchronization so that it can keep synchronizing the identities from your Active Directory, right? Very straightforward. It's already syncing. I can click synchronize now. Boom, it syncs. And once it syncs it, the users are shown up into the portal here, and you can enable or disable the users here. You can go to the properties and make sure that you have the phone number, you have enabled, right? And once you do that, you can enable or disable here. You can also send an email letting the user understand that, hey, this has been already been configured, and you would be configured with the multi-factor authentication. So, I mean, honestly speaking, folks, here, this is not a rocket science. This is very straightforward. It should not take you more than an hour to deploy MFA server, right? Download binaries, install it, and configure your Active Directory synchronization or directory integration, and here you go. And once you are done there, now depending on what you're trying to accomplish, in my scenario, I am doing few things here. I'm doing a Radius server, which is the VPN, and I'm going to show you this is the VPN, internal VPN server IP address 192.168.0.21. Let's just look into that. Very, very straightforward. You don't have to do much here unless you are customizing and tailoring your solution. But for the basic, it is very straightforward, right? You have this, you have added your application. If I go here, edit it, shows you what it is, right? Application name, shared secret that you have configured on the VPN server. So let's go back into the VPN and make sure that you understand that. So this is my VPN server. The shared key is already captured. And install the routing and remote access. Here you go, right? So you have got your MFA VPN remote access client is already pre-configured. The only thing that you need to get it here, get the shared key which I have created here, and then once you are done, you use that shared key in that area, right? Okay, so once this is done, now we are ready for a actual demonstration of VPN. Oh, I should also show you the IP addresses here before I go. So IP config, I've got two interfaces here. 10.10.51 is my public interface where my VPN is going to connect, and then I have an internal IP address here as 192.168.0.21, which is what I configured on my MFA server as Radius server. This is internal network. This is public network. That's where my VPN servers, VPN clients are going to connect, right? Pretty straightforward, folks. Again, this is not very difficult to understand. This is very easy in my viewpoint. And once you do that, let's see the implication of this VPN here, right? And see whether it works or not. So if I go to the client here, and I can try to create a VPN here and set up a new network connection or networks for VPN. Okay, and here you go to connect a network device. Okay, WAN connection, no, I will use an existing which is I created already, and I have got this user that has been configured for multi-factor authentication. If I connect now, and I should hopefully receive a phone call. Here you go.
The Microsoft sign-in verification system. Please press the pound key to finish your verification.
And here you go.
Sign-in was successfully verified. Goodbye.
And now my VPN is connected, right? So if I now go there, by the way, I just want to show you this machine is not a part of the domain here. It's in the work group as far as I remember, right? This is in the work group. And now I am connected to the corporate network. And if I go here and run and go to the domain controller, I should be able to get there. So that's the VPN part that I just want to make sure that works. I think we are good here. Now, the next thing that I need to show you is the IIS based or your on-prem websites that you're using for a variety of reasons, your HR portal, your Citrix portal, or your any other portal that you use in the organization. How can you make sure that you can do the MFA or multi-factor authentication there, right? Again, very, very straightforward, very simple. I'm going back to my MFA server, and if I go here, oops. So Now I need to go to the IIS authentication for configuring my websites. I have one website here. This is MFA. This is actually the same server that I'm sitting on, Mfa Server mf.test, and just add here. And that's all you need to do, right? If I say here add it, this is the only configuration I require. Required multi-factor authentication, users match, boom, right? And if I go now here, going back to the client machine, if I remember that, okay. So this is let's go on another machine because this is right now the VPN. So let's go on Mfa DC. All right, so what we're going to try to do here is trying to hit that website. I haven't done anything. This is just the default website, right? So, and I just make sure that it prompts for the authentication. And that's the server. That's the URL asking me for my credentials. I'm going to use this user here who has the subscription for MFA. I hope I typed everything right. Here you go. So the multi-factor authentication kicked in back again.
Using the Microsoft sign-in verification system. Please press the pound key to finish your verification. Your sign-in was successfully verified. Goodbye.
Voila. So you see here that it's very straightforward even for your IIS websites to configure that. Matter of few minutes, not hours, that you have configured your multi-factor authentication, right? So VPN works fine, your IIS websites works fine, all cloud-based application works fine with a very, very limited configuration, right? You don't need to be an expert to deploy MFA. That's all my objective here is, right? Now the last portion of the demonstration is to show you the RDS, right? So I have got a machine here which is a Windows 2008 R2. As I said, do not try on 2012 R2 because I don't know when Microsoft is going to fix it. But I have this RDP server which is Windows 2008 R2, as you can see it here, right? So now we're going to try to do an RDP here. Now, in order to do a MFA on RDP server, you need to install the MFA server on the RDP itself, right? So if you see here MFA, this is Windows 2008 R2. Now I have already deployed MFA server, the same process, right? The only thing that you need to do here is, in order to provide the multi-factor authentication for your terminal services, is to add that server under Windows authentication. So let me just show you. Apologize for a slight delay in my demonstration. This server is running short on resources, my Hyper-V server. So just bear with me. Here you go. And the only thing that you do here, Windows authentication, you enable Windows authentication and you add your terminal server. At this point, if you go here, this is the only thing that you have, right? Multi-factor authentication and user matches. How easy, how simple, very, very straightforward. I'm going to cancel it here and I'm going to try to make an RDP session to prove that it works, right? So if I go here, run msdsc, and now I'm going to go to asking me for the user. That's perfect. It should send a phone call.
Thank you for using the Microsoft Sign-In Verification System. Please press the pound key to finish your verification. Your sign-in was successfully verified. Goodbye.
There you go. So now we have done, the demonstration is now complete, and I just recapitulate what we have done in this demonstration so far. We have shown you that how simple it is to deploy MFA in terms of your cloud-based application. Enabling them is, you can do it as single user or bulk users through Office 365 admin portal. We also shown you how the conditional Azure access works, so that your users are not getting annoying phone calls when they are on their internal networks. We have discussed and demonstrated the conditional Azure access policy, which was very intuitive. We have also demonstrated the multi-factor authentication running on a another application in Azure, which is Azure B2b, to allow the on-prem SharePoint access. That worked flawlessly. Then we also saw the extension of Azure MFA over on-prem solutions, and the first thing that we have proven here, that we were able to configure Azure MFA successfully on Microsoft VPN solution. That was easy and simple. Then we have also demonstrated on IIS based websites how easy it was to configure the MFA on that side. And lastly, we also concluded that on the remote desktop services running on 2008 R2 or 2008, we were very successful with RDP multi-factor authentication. So folks, this concludes my demonstration for today. I hope you will like it. I hope this was informative, and I hope you would deploy it for more number of either your organization or your partner organizations. So thank you so very much. Have a rest of the best of your day, and goodbye. Bye-bye.